Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Self-Care for the Soul podcast. I'm your host, Debra Graugnard, and I have with me today Janet Bentley. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you so much, Debra.
I'm so happy to have you here. Janet's going to talk to us today about the power of connection in healing from sexual abuse and complex PTSD. And I'm really excited that she's going to talk to us today because, excited from the depths of my heart, excited because there's a lot of special challenges right now for people who struggle or in the healing process, or even long healed, from from abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and complex PTSD. There are extra challenges in this time of isolation, and Janet has some beautiful insights into that she's going to share with us today. And so I'm grateful to you for being here to share your wisdom and to give that extra boost of hope and encouragement that so many of us need during this time. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to read your bio so that people know. I read your bio and you've done some wonderful, amazing things to support survivors, and I want everybody to know just how much you've done. Janet Bentley, she was raised in Southern California and currently lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, where she created and manages the foundation Courageous Survivors. Janet is a survivor of child sexual abuse. Her driving passion is to be a lifeline to survivors. She has found that sharing her story has been key to healing her own pain and exposing this epidemic. Janet has written her memoir called Don't Expect Me to Cry, Refusing to Let Childhood Sexual Abuse Steal My Life. It was published in October 2018 and has received numerous literary accolades. She has been interviewed on several podcasts, and I'm grateful to have you here. She has a powerful message to share. She is a member of RAIN, which stands for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. She's a member of their Speakers Bureau. She's a facilitator of Darkness to Lights, Stewards of Children, Child Sexual Abuse Prevention Training, and an ambassador for NASCA, which is National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse in Colorado. Janet enjoys in her spare time, I imagine, because you are doing so much to be a light and a support for others. She enjoys nature, reading, hiking, and riding her bike. So again, welcome, Janet. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
Janet, can you just start out by, only as much as you feel comfortable to share and also feel would be a benefit to others, about your journey, how you came through what you came through, and your story, and how you came to be doing the work that you're doing now to help others.
Absolutely. And thank you to everyone that's joining in, and thank you, Debra. It is always an honor to be able to share my experience and hopefully impart some kind of hope to somebody else. So my journey has been a long one. I came from a very abusive environment growing up. I grew up in a home where addiction was rampant. My family they were alcoholics, drug addicts. My father basically sexually abused me from the age of 4. That's the earliest I can remember. I often wonder because, these things don't just happen at a certain age just because we remember them at a certain age. So, but it was a very scary environment, and it was filled with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of neglect. And I feel like I searched for so long as a child for a way out in my mind. And, you know, for whatever reason, I'm the oldest of 8. And I am one of the only ones that have not gone down the destructive path that most of my family has. You know, my dad killed himself when he was 44. My mom died at 50. I have a brother that committed suicide at 24. Another brother OD'd, and you know, it just goes on and on. And that's just in my immediate family. There was a lot of, you know, of this going on the outsides as well in extended family. And so what I did though is I determined that I wanted to escape, that I wanted to get out of there. And the way to do that was to be anything except like them. And although, you know, that, I mean, that was just a survival. That was a way that I survived. And I searched for that in, you know, I feel like I look back on it and I see myself as kind of just grasping onto anything I could get, like, you know, a teacher's praise, or you know, like I got straight A's in school. I really went down the perfectionism route. You know, I thought if I did that, I'd be more, you know, I'd be better, whatever. And I searched for it in religion. I got involved with a friend who belonged to a very fundamentalist church, which I didn't realize at the time. I was 11. And I would go with her family to church. That turned out to be kind of a nightmare experience as well, unfortunately, because it was a very shame-based religion. I ended up being raped by one of the elders there. I think sometimes in those, and this is it in no way against religion or anything like that, but just my experience, it felt kind of cultish, and they, you know, it's easy to get to children that are looking for love and looking for acceptance. And I think I fit the category. So there was that. And, you know, I graduated from high school. I got married, had 2 kids, and I never really, you know, I left home when I was 17. One weekend, I bought a car, left home, found an apartment, I was gone. And
Wow.
all in that weekend. And that was my way of getting the heck out of there. And though I felt guilt at leaving my siblings there and, you know, all that, I had to get out for my own sanity. And jumped into a relationship, again, looking for that love, looking for that acceptance, looking for that self-esteem.
Probably security too, would you say?
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I never found what I was looking for, because what I've learned in the last few years is what I was looking for is actually inside of me. It's actually looking for something only I, well, not just only I, but that I have a big part in giving to myself. But I never dealt with the trauma. I never went, you know, I never talked to my ex-husband about it.
Wow.
Never. And it wasn't until my mom died. I was in my early 30s, and my kids were young, and I fell apart when she died. I had a 2-year kind of mental breakdown, very depressed. I started going to therapy with a psychiatrist who also did therapy. The first time I'd ever talked to anybody about what had happened. And it just was an avalanche of emotions, an avalanche of flashbacks, an avalanche of memories. And, you know, it was very difficult. It was a very difficult time. I ended up multiple suicide attempts, multiple hospitalizations. You know, it was a very dark time for me. I also found during that time pills, which seemed to take away the, well, they did. They took away, it was kind of like accident how I started taking them. You know, I had some Valium from a dentist, and I ended up taking it, and I thought, well, this isn't really doing much. And I took a little more until I realized it could really medicate those emotions away. So that began another journey. And anyways, that relationship ended. And like I said, I'm in my early 30s, mid 30s. And I met my husband, who I'm still married to now. We've been married, he's on here, I think, and it's 21, 22 years. We got married in 98, so I can't do that really quickly in my head. But anyways, and so he's from England, and I moved to England to be with him, to work out immigration on both ends of the, you know, both countries, and stopped therapy, stopped meds, stopped everything. And we were there for a few years. Things were pretty good. I was missing my kids. We knew we had to come here. Then he was going to miss his kids, and it was very emotional. But we ended up, beginning of 2000, or end of, you know, Y2K, coming back to Northern California. We moved up there, and that was when I was diagnosed with PMDD. Was hitting me really hard, and that led to
PMDD stand for?
It's premenstrual it's an extreme form of PMS, extreme form. And one of the ways they treated that at the time, I mean, I was like, I was not myself for like 2 weeks out of the month. One of the ways they treated it was with a high dose of antidepressants. And that like was amazing. It got me into seeing psychiatrists because they were the ones, you know, prescribing the antidepressants. And things started to get better again. Things were going pretty good again. Then we moved around. We moved Arizona, New Jersey, or North Carolina, then New Jersey. And in 2012, we moved back to Arizona. During that time, I had a cancer diagnosis. I had chemo, radiation. My husband and I were going through some real ups and downs, and, you know, mostly because of my health issues. And it was just it was a really rough time. And I still, during all this time, had not dealt, you know, since I left that first therapist, I never got back into therapy. I saw psychiatrists for meds and had those prescribed, but never really dealt with the trauma, the underlying stuff that was still causing all the pain. So fast forward to Arizona. Basically, I slipped into, I've been diagnosed with major depression several times, and the depression took over again. And I think it was bound to eventually do that again, because like I said, I hadn't dealt with what was underneath the surface. So
yeah, it was calling you.
Exactly. So into 2014 changed my life. I, through a series of circumstances, I became very suicidal again. My husband and I were very worried. And what that led me to was going to a treatment center for trauma called the Meadows in Wickenburg, Arizona. And wow, that's all I can say. It dug deep into what was causing all the pain and everything. And I met some people that I feel like they're my family. And it was the beginning of my healing. After I left there, I attended, this was in 2015 now, I attended an IOP, which is an intensive outpatient program. And that was in Scottsdale, Arizona, still run by the Meadows. During that period, I had another depression lapse because I was still drinking to medicate. I was still I had gotten into this habit of drinking every night, which then depressed me, which then led my depression worse. So I basically, that went on for a couple of years. And in 2017, beginning of 2017, I felt the depression coming back strong again. And I just didn't want to go back there. I had tried a couple different therapists who wanted to do certain therapeutic modalities with me that didn't work. And so I would like quit, you know, and not go back. And I just hadn't found the right place, the right thing. In the meantime, I had started writing again, though. A very dear friend of mine named Brad, we went to be trained for Darkness to Light in San Diego. This was in 2015. And
what was that called in San Diego?
Darkness to Light.
Oh, Darkness to Light. Okay.
Yeah. We got trained for doing the Stewards of Children child abuse, sexual abuse prevention training.
Mm-hmm.
During that 2-hour one way, we had a round trip, so it was 4 hours total. We talked and we shared stories. And I told him that I had kept journals and had started writing. And he was like, wow, you know, I think you should really get back into that. I think this could help somebody. I think, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, I wonder if I could do that. So I dug all my journals out, and it took me until 2018 to, you know, kind of get all that together, get my journals in and bring it up to date. And that was a very healing experience, a very cathartic experience, and a very painful experience. And I think during that, you know, leading up to the beginning of 2017 is what had caused me to kind of slip again, because I was still drinking, I was still medicating, I was still, but at the same time writing and reliving all these memories. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try one more time to get a therapist. You know, I'm going to try again. And I looked on Psychology Today, did a lot of research, and found a therapist that I read what he did. I read his philosophies, and it seemed to jive with mine. And so I thought, okay, I sent an email off, and that started my journey. That started my real healing journey. And I still see him to this day, twice a week, still. And during that time, you know, in 2018, that's what led up to my book. You know, I got the courage to publish it. I got the courage to really go for it and put it out there. And one of the things that had led up to that was the inner child work that I started doing, which was so emotional for me. Oh my goodness. Like,
only imagine.
When I was first asked what I thought about little Janet, it was like, I hate her.
Yeah.
You know? So learning self-compassion for her has been one of the most healing, but most emotional experiences. However, she got her voice. This book.
Can you hold it up again?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful book, a beautiful cover.
This book, that's the inner child. If you haven't figured that out, me with my inner child. And I feel like the sexual abuse that I experienced stole so much of my life, which hence the subtitle, that, you know, she ended up getting a voice and getting to tell her story and start a real road of healing. And, you know, so that kind of brings me up to, you know, where I wrote the book. And it's been the beginning of a journey that I can't even describe, you know, the blessings and the things that I've learned and that I'm still learning. So I'm gonna, that brought me to that. So I'm wondering, where I should go from here as far as what you think would be best to
Yeah,
talk about.
yeah, yeah. First, I just want to acknowledge some of the people who are commenting in the chat. I think Brad is here, and I want to thank you, Brad, for planting that seed for her to write this book, because I bet that's the same Brad. He says,
Yes, it is. I just noticed.
yes, yeah. Thank you, Brad, for planting that seed for her to write that book. And he says, you saved my life. Knowing you are there always gives me the strength to live on. And Norma says, beautiful book cover, so fitting and powerful. And it is beautiful. And so if you're listening to the recording, if you're listening to the audio, be sure and visit the website. We'll give you Janet's website information, and I'll give you the blog where this will be posted so that you can take a look at that. And Janet, I have a question for you just in terms of writing the book. And I want to say hello to Wanda and Sabina, who have also commented on Facebook as well. Thank you. So what would you say, like, the importance of writing? You said you kept a journal for a long time,
Right.
right? So there's, what would you say the role of journaling played in your healing process? And I guess journaling versus actually then putting it together into a book.
Right. That's a good question. I like that. The journaling kept me sane. The journaling gave me an outlet for all the crazy feelings and fears that I had going through all of it, and going through like, especially like after my mom died, and and after my dad died, and because that was another thing. Like, I realized, it wasn't until after my mom died that I actually think I felt safe enough to talk and to deal with this. And so going back to all those journals and getting that into a book, it was, I'm so grateful that I kept those journals, because there were so many things that I had forgot, like, not experiences necessarily, but the emotions, and it helped me to see where I was now and how far I had come. And then the challenge was, I know when I first started putting them into book form, or into, a form where I was going to write a book, I got this software program that my husband downloaded for me, and I was getting it all organized, and I started writing it. And I was like, well, how do I get this across? How do I express all of this in a way that is going to be, readable, and relatable to everybody. And also, I know when I first started, I thought I would write it in its final form, I think, in the back of my head,
Right. Yeah.
thinking, well, the perfectionism really took over. And I actually remember asking Brad, I don't know if he remembers this, but I remember asking him, how do I do this? And he was like, he had a creative writing teacher that said, just write, edit later. And that's what I decided to do. I just dumped it all. And then it was like edit, and rewrite. And my husband was so helpful. Oh my gosh. When I was doing this, he read it over and over and over and caught so much stuff, and suggested certain things. And he was basically my biggest editor. Yeah, it was an interesting process.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And Brad is saying that journaling, you taught me to talk to someone. And we're, one of the things that I know that you want to share about is the power of connection. and here we are in a time of isolation, and I'm wondering how this process of journaling and writing might fit into that or not.
Well, the connection, oh my gosh. So I feel like I've really learned the importance of connection the last few years in my trauma therapy. That is one of the biggest gifts that my therapist has given me. Because when you're a child or an adult, but when, the complex trauma, when it's throughout your whole childhood and your life, one of the ways that you protect yourself is to isolate, and one thing my therapist has taught me is that, when you're a child, connection is life. Without connection, you die. You're born needing that. You're born absolutely requiring that. But when you're traumatized and abused, the way you survive is to go into yourself. Well, I shouldn't say you. What I did is I blamed myself, not consciously, but I figured, the opposite of dying, I had to do something. To survive death, blaming myself and going into myself was surviving. If I was at fault, I had a little bit of control, right? I could be better. Maybe they would love me. Maybe they wouldn't hurt me. Maybe they wouldn't rape me. Maybe they wouldn't do these things if I could be better, if I was perfect, and so that's what I did for so many years, just try to be better, to be good. But at the same time, then fast forward to when you're an adult, your nervous system has learned that from such a young age that and also, let me backtrack a bit, the connecting to your body, the dissociation, that was a big survival coping mechanism for me, was to dissociate from my body, to dissociate, to not be there. And so then as an adult, when you're in a situation, I guess, where you need connection to heal, you need connection to thrive, right? It doesn't feel safe. The nervous system is like, this isn't safe. I would tell myself, no, the way I'm safe is I can kill myself. The way I'm safe is I can disappear from this world. That's safety to me. But in reality, that's not ever what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be connected to people, but I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like, I didn't want that abandonment. I didn't want that rejection that I had always received, even though in reality, as an adult, the likelihood of that was so much less, but it didn't matter. That's, that's kind of where I went. So
that patterning had already been established, and your nervous
exactly.
system was remembering what it had learned, which was greatly conflicting with what you knew as an adult that you needed, and probably, to some extent as a child as well.
Yeah. And it basically comes down to what my biggest need was my biggest fear. And that is such a core issue that is so hard to overcome. And so I start therapy, and he starts preaching connection. And I say preaching in the kindest way, because he knew that would be healing. He knew that that's where, I couldn't just depend on him. I couldn't, you can't just depend on one person for everything. And I was always at one extreme, either shut down or hypervigilant. I was never like in the middle of, that functional place. So, it started very slowly. And I started, risking being me, risking being a friend, risking someone saying, I don't want to be your friend, by, putting myself out there. And slowly but surely it started happening. And now, like you mentioned, oh my goodness, so this pandemic, wow, this has
We are in a really challenging time. Before we jump into that, can I just say something real quick? I just want to point out, you said you used the word you as a, speaking for yourself. But I just want to say to anybody who's listening who can relate that what you're saying is, it's a natural, normal part of how the nervous system operates, how the psyche operates, and how we survive, or how people survive such things. So if you're a person who's experienced these things and may find yourself in a struggle and judging yourself, or finding yourself in similar patterns that Janet is talking about, then just understand this is natural, normal, a way that your body and your psyche survive and cope. And it's not a broken thing. It's not a broken thing. And so, Janet, I really appreciate you sharing the depth that you did and explaining that. And if you can, talk about like how with this pandemic, and if you can say even a little bit more about like how did you bridge to connection? Where did you find connection? And
sure.
Yeah, how did you make that? I mean, that is a courageous step to risk being you, risk being seen, risk being loved or not. That's a big, it's a challenging thing.
Very scary. It's very scary when you're not used to it. And I love what you just said, and I'm so glad you said what you just said, because I was very critical, self-critical, by feeling broken, by feeling like I had these patterns and I wasn't, quote, normal. And that what you just described is a type of self-compassion. It's something I'm learning still, is people that, no wonder I was like that. No wonder we developed those patterns, people that have experienced abuse. That saved us, that saved our lives. So good for us, right? And bridging it was very scary. I personally was attending a group, which helped. I still didn't reach out to anybody in the group at first. It was a Meadows alumni group. I started 12-step. I started 12-step to stop drinking. I went to Pills Anonymous to find out how I could, stop using pills as a medication for wanting to disappear. And all those things began to, and I think my the encouragement that I received for that was I went into some of these situations, some of these groups and some of these places, and, lo and behold, there were kind people waiting to welcome me in, waiting to share experiences and be my friend. And wow, and I think she's on here. I have a good friend named Martha, and I remember, and my therapist still reminds me of this every once in a while. A few years ago, I was in Flower Child having lunch with my husband and my granddaughter, and she was, and I knew her from a group that I went to, and she was sitting across with another friend having lunch, and I was like, Simon, I think that's Martha. And he was like, well, you should go say hi. And I'm like, I don't want to go say hi. It frightened me to death. And I don't even know what my fear was. I guess it's that fear of being rejected, of whatever. But I did it. I started pushing myself. I started walking through the fear, you know, um, through support from therapy, through support from other places. It's like I went and said, hi, we are best friends today. We are, soul sisters. So I guess, the way I did it was taking a chance and putting myself in those places, being brave enough to put myself in situations where I would meet people, as scary as it was, like Brene Brown always says, about courage. It's not a lack of fear. It's fear, but going anyways. And then you find out, like you find out you're not rejected. That helps you a little bit the next time. Then that helps you a little bit the next time. So yeah.
Add some new information into that nervous system patterning that says,
Exactly.
hey, maybe there's a different way, right? Let me tell you what Martha said about you in the chat right here.
Oh dear.
Janet is one of the most courageous and inspiring individuals I have ever known. I have learned so much from her and am forever grateful that she is in my life. So it's beautiful. And, so again, another layer of encouragement there for those of us who might see that person and say, oh, well, she wouldn't want me to bother her right now. She wouldn't want to hear from me. I'm just going to stay over here and just hide.
Yeah.
Right? What a beautiful thing that you had the courage and that you took the step, and that you, and it sounds like that was a step and you've continued and continued.
Right.
So yeah. And you found groups, just to reiterate, you found groups, specific groups that where you could meet people who were perhaps struggling with the similar things.
Exactly.
And would understand, and so you could have like people to take those steps with.
Exactly.
Connection.
Absolutely.
Because I think so often I and I'll speak for myself, I've found myself, and I also hear other people saying that, well, I can take the step within the space that I'm in once so-and-so changes, or if so-and-so would only get it. But so often they have no clue, and they're not going to get it. And we're not doing ourselves any service to stay in the little bubble that we're in and wait for other people to change so that we can feel safe and better to make the changes we need to make. So I love that you have sought out those groups and took those steps in a safer environment.
Right.
Yeah. So what are you finding now as we're in this time of isolation in terms of how to stay connected, the needs for connection, how we might recognize if we're having needs or if those close to us are having needs for this connection, how we can first off recognize when we need it.
Right.
Start there.
Okay. Well, for me, I found, on and off through, the ups and downs through this whole thing. I'll be in a really good place, and then I'll start to feel, a little bit isolated and everything. And I have to say that even though I feel like I've come so far, and I'm still healing from all of this, but it's not easy to let go of those coping strategies. They'll probably be with me forever. They'll get better. But during this pandemic and the triggers and the climate and the news and all of it, I find that old coping strategy of disappearing, shutting down, being isolated calls me at times. It's like, oh, just, I don't even want to get up this morning. I don't want to make an effort. I just want to disappear. I want to disappear and wake up and it'll all be done. Well, that leads me towards disconnection. That leads me towards depression. And one of the most positive things that I just learned, or that I'm just feeling, I guess, this last month, is that even though that calls me, and the healthier I get, sometimes the stronger that gets, because it's like, wait a minute, you're letting go of me, you need me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go back there. I might slip back a little bit, but I actually talked to my therapist a couple weeks ago, I think it was, and I said, I'm starting to feel like I want the isolation again. And he's always encouraged me to make phone calls. Like if I say to him, I've, talked to somebody or whatever, he'll say, well, did you text? Did you call? Did you see him in person? Each one is a stronger layer of connection. So the phone calls are kind of what we have at the moment, a lot of the time. And so I said, I need to be accountable to start making phone calls. I want to see how that works, so I have a book. It's actually a gratitude journal that somebody gave me, and it just happens to have 3 lines, and I use it for phone calls. And our agreement is that I make 3 phone calls a day. And it's really funny because he'll ask me who I've called, or, if I'm keeping it up or whatever. Martha happens to be one of the people that I can call, but she doesn't really count because it's easy to call her. So like she counts, but it's like I have to call 2 people. Like I can call her, but then there has to be 2 more people. So I've been doing that for the last couple of weeks, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. I'm calling people that are telling me it's like a win-win situation. People are saying to me, oh, I'm so glad you called. I need to call people. Or, it's so nice to talk to someone, and I'm getting the benefit, and it feels like they're getting the benefit, and it's helping me. And I'm hoping that when the pandemic gets easier and hopefully we can get back to a little bit of normalcy, that I'm going to still retain that that phone, picking up that heavy phone has gotten a lot lighter. I'm hoping. So we'll see.
Yes.
But it's helping me now.
Beautiful. And these days we have FaceTime or Duo or Zoom, and anybody can get a free Zoom account, so that can allow us in this time of isolation. As we know, Zoom is just really like blown the roof off since this time of isolation. So many people getting their Zoom accounts, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful that we can have that. I'm I'm thinking, I know you have a Facebook group. Is it the Courageous Survivors, the name of your
Yeah,
Facebook?
right.
Like you could, and maybe you've already done this, like put a challenge in there for people to make those connections and to just report in that they made their connections each, to give that encouragement and that
I love that.
for people to continue to maintain connections.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Well, I want to read a couple more things here from the chat. Kimberly says, Janet's authenticity has allowed me to speak my truth. Her courage inspires me to continue to push forward. Janet, I will say, I follow you on Facebook also, and I know that you're going like this, just pointing that out. I know that a lot of people have been inspired by your writing, by your work, in the work that you do. I only see it on Facebook, and I know that you have these other, the 3 other organizations that you're a part of, that you speak, you reach out to people, you support people. What would you say is the number one just like the number one, I hear connection. I hear connection. So let me ask it this way. What was your number one turning point that finally, when you said you finally found the therapist that was like the one that really helped you to make progress? And it seems like, push you through perhaps a wall that you hadn't been able to push through before. What would you say was the number one thing that that helped you, or that did that for you?
That helped me through that process, you mean?
Like that made the difference. Like, what was it about this therapist or this
Right.
process that made the difference for you that others weren't
Right.
able to reach?
Well, I think, I think what I got in this trauma therapy with this trauma therapist is someone who understood, well, basically, he's a somatic experience therapist. It's not just somatic experience in the therapy, it's talk therapy. But it's the titration of the therapy of someone who has helped me through this therapeutic relationship realize things that I never learned. I'm learning through this relationship things I never learned as a child. And get very emotional.
Yeah, that's
one of those things that I've learned is that that being in the middle, I guess I want to say, being in this middle functional place, not being either shut down or too scared, is a safe place. I've learned safety. I've learned that the things that are difficult, therapy is not, just like growing up. When you're a child growing up, even if you're in a functional home, I would imagine, it's not easy. You have to learn lessons. You have to learn how to be independent. That's one thing I wanted to teach my children was, you love them, you care about them, but you want them to be okay on their own. Whereas I've always, before this, grasped on to things that I thought would give me that safety, that would give me that feeling. And learning that I can building a support group, I guess, building a support group through connection, through shared experiences, through service, through sharing my story, through all those things enriches my experience, my life. And so I guess in saying all that, I think that is all connection, and also the self-compassion. The way I have been able to, and I have young granddaughters, and that's helped me tremendously in, a million ways because I love them to death. But in my therapy, when I can't see that compassion for myself, I can see it by imagining them, by imagining me at their age, by seeing them. Like, would I have wanted that for myself? Would I talk to them like I talk to myself? So that whole inner child self-compassion piece, which it's very hard for me, like you just saw me shaking my head no, right? I have a hard time taking good in. I have a hard time taking positive in, but I'm learning.
Yeah.
you know, and so I think those two things,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful because, I heard you talk about perfectionism and hypervigilance. And what I just heard you say was the thing that you got from this therapist was learning that you can just be in the in between place and not have to be perfect or striving, and you can be safe there.
Yes, exactly.
That's very powerful, very powerful.
Exactly.
And now then to have a support structure where you can have connection and actually put that into a practice where your whole nervous system and your psyche and your body memory can experience being okay in connection
Right.
when you're not in the perfectionism and the hypervigilance and the other coping strategies is teaching you what you didn't get as a child, what you didn't.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful. So, and this is something that you couldn't learn in your isolation. This is the power of connection.
Right. Exactly.
That's, yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, um, any other words of wisdom that you would like to share with people?
Well, I don't know if they're very wise, but
All of your words are very wise, and there are people that need these words and need to hear it from you and can relate to what you're saying. May not have gone through the exact same things that you went
right.
through, but they need you and they need your words.
Well, I think the other thing that was a big moment, and you know, it's kind of a good way to end it, you know, or you know, kind of bring it all together, is that I think this also comes from the perfectionism or whatever. When I started therapy, I was like, you know, okay, I want to do this, this. I want to do this perfect. I want to do it right. I want to get from point A to point Z, and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be healed. I'm going to be, you know, whatever. And a while back, I realized that's not how it works. There is not a finish line. There is not a point. I may be in trauma therapy for the rest of my life. Do you know, I think I expected, if I didn't do it perfect, if I didn't do my therapy perfect, I was going to get kicked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? It's not like that. Life happens while you're doing all this work. You can have fun. You can live. You can enjoy things and do all that at the same time you're doing this. And you're not always in the same place. You know, it might be 5 steps forward, 2 steps back. And you know, it's easy to get, again, critical of ourselves. I think, at least I have, you know, it's like, what are you doing? What, you're losing all your progress. No, it's just integrating somehow, and I'll get back on track and, you know, keep going. And so I think realizing that was like a relief. It gave me some peace. Like, you know, wow, okay, I'll just do it as slowly as I need to, and the best I can, and that's good enough.
One day at a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And this, I mean, it's so funny. And this analogy has been coming to me in the last couple of days, and I just saw it again. But it's, I'm thinking of, like, the even the Babe Ruths in life, who are ready for the pitch and pointing to the outfield. They don't hit everyone. They don't win every game. They strike out sometimes, and they keep going. And I think,
Yeah.
it's a little bit different, but it's kind of, yeah, this is day by day in life. Some days are
Absolutely.
strikeouts, some days are walks, some days are home runs, some days we don't even get up to the plate. or pick up the bat, or we hide from the ball, as the case may be. And so, yeah, thank you so much for everything that you have shared with us today. Let me read a couple of these, and then I want to ask you to share about how people can get your book or the best way that they can connect with you. And while you're thinking that over, Brad, does he call you JJ? Janet?
Yeah.
I have no words. I know we always say, if this saves one life, well, guess what? It saved us one life, my life. You sharing has saved so many lives. Call me today, he says. And Martha says, Debra, I want to thank you for having my beautiful friend on your show. Janet is such a blessing and has so much to share with this world. Thank you for the opportunity for her to have this space to give to others. I agree. Thank you, Martha, and thank you, Brad, and thank you, Mary, and thank you, Kimberly, and thank you, Norma, and thank you, Wanda, and thank you, Sabina, and for everybody else who has shared and who is here watching and has not shared in whatever case. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting. This will be instantly live on Facebook, and you're welcome to share it in wherever you feel people could benefit. Share the link directly or share it into groups or on your page or whatever. And it will be on the podcast in another week where it can be shared via audio as well. So Janet, I want to thank you so much for everything that you shared, and thank you especially for having the courage and for acting on that courage, taking the action and taking the steps to break through those barriers and those grooves in the neurological pathways that had been established to take you in a certain direction, for having the courage to bust out and to carve some new grooves into your neurological pathways and make those connections. So can you tell people now how to get your book and the best way to connect with you?
Sure. And I just want to say thank you for having me on here. It's been an honor and a privilege. I appreciate it so very much. Well, my book is on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. You can also go to my website, which is very simple, janetbentley.com. www.janetbentley.com. And on there's a link to get the book. There's my contact information, my email, and that's an easy way to get to everything. So.
Okay, so I just put your link to your website in the Zoom chat. So you guys can click on that. And your link to the book is there too. Don't expect me to cry. And tell me the subtitle again so I don't mess it up.
Refusing to let childhood sexual abuse steal my life.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that courage, and thank you for refusing, and thank you for sharing all that you've shared with us today. And thank you everyone for being here and on Zoom and on Facebook. Thank you all. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.
You too.